To buy a new house in Chelmsford, where there is a lot of new development, you're in the 800,000 to 900,000. So obviously a couple sales like that will shoot up the average price. But I think in general, it's surviving well. I mean, the area, you buy bigger lots, you buy houses usually with garages, and it's not so unaffordable that first-time buyers can't buy. Welcome to the TNT Real Estate Podcast, where we spark conversations that set you up for real estate success. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Tanya. Each week, we bring you expert tips on navigating Northern Ontario's real estate market. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, we've got the tools to help you thrive. So one of the new statistics that we have access to at the Real Estate Board is the showing data. So what's cool about that is we can actually now look at what locations, what areas, specifically neighborhoods, are getting a lot of buyer activity, a lot of buyers going to see those properties. And what we can do also as listing agents is we can sort of compare how many showings we're getting on our properties we have listed compared to the average on the market or in that neighborhood in particular. So it's really cool. We've been able to, as an office, we like to look at our data and we like to go back to 2024 and see what trends and try to foresee what's going to happen in 2025. So looking at that sales data, I'd like to ask you, Tyler, because you are our New Sudbury expert. What kind of trends have we seen in New Sudbury in particular in that neighborhood in terms of activity, pricing, and that kind of stuff?
In New Sudbury, our listings went up last year in 2024, 8%. Our amount of sales went up 10%. And so 2023, we averaged about 280 sales. That went up to over 300 sales just in New Sudbury. And so that actually increased the average price up 5%. So we're still just under $500,000. We're at $493,000. But we are seeing it's a stable market like it always has been and always hopefully will be.
So what do you foresee coming in 2025? With that increase in activity, we also saw the number of showings increase or be significantly higher, I believe, in New Sudbury compared to other neighborhoods. What other kind of trends are you seeing in the area, and what do you think is going to happen in 2025?
Okay, so New Sudbury, we saw a lot of out-of-town investors in 2024, and actually even before that, really like throughout COVID, we saw a lot of people moving into the city because of affordable prices, good style of living. So I think that's going to continue in 2025. We're going to see more out-of-town investors. And with all these new changes with the Ontario Building Code and the grants that are coming out, the New Sudbury bungalow, like I always say, is a very easy duplex conversion. So somebody buys as a single family, adds a unit in the basement, and you have either student housing, you have two families living there, or you have the same family and multi-generational living in the same house.
Do you think that New Sudbury's kind of hit its peak now for pricing and for that sort of investor influx of investment dollars, I should say, or do you think it's going to go higher? Do you think there's going to be more investors looking, and do you think our prices are going to continue to increase?
I think it's going to continue to increase. And obviously the last episode I said that our average price was going to go up to $525 across the whole board. And I think New Sudbury is basically the average house in Sudbury, which is the New Sudbury bungalow. So I think that's going to follow. So I think we're going to see a pretty decent increase in 2025. And it's based on, it's still lower than some other places in the city. Obviously, South End has a much higher average price, and a couple, obviously, of the outlying areas that we're going to get into a little bit later. So I think it's still an affordable area. It's close to everything. We have 2 colleges, we have the mall, we have Costco and all the shopping up on top of the hill. And I think it's just a great central spot for most people and families to live.
Do you think it's primarily that sort of student rentals that is driving that activity, that investor activity in the area?
I mean, with the amount of out-of-town students or out-of-country students even, there's just not enough places on campus for them to stay. So like in the general vicinity of Cambrian College and obviously Boreal, you can feel the changes with the amount of students that are around. But it's not only students. I think just like, families want to be there, whether they can afford to buy a house or they're still in, one of the rentals. Yeah, I think it's going to be a mixture of both. I think it's going to continue, but obviously student rentals around both of the colleges are going to increase for sure.
It's interesting to see that the area of New Sudbury in particular has grown so much with that investor influx and student rentals and various multi-generational households. Whereas when you look at the South End, which is in proximity to Laurentian University, we also know Laurentian probably doesn't have enough housing for their student population as well. But I suppose in the South End, maybe we have more larger multifamilies to house, the influx of students. And so there isn't really that push for that duplex type conversion quite as much in the South End neighborhoods.
Yeah, you see, I find especially like hospital area and even over kind of like Robinson area, you see a lot of student houses, but they're not necessarily, separating upstairs from downstairs because, they might be a little bit older. It might be harder to do. There could be some different construction issues as well. But like I say all the time, and I always probably sound like a broken record, but the New Sudbury bungalow is it's an easy conversion. There's a front door, there's a back door, you split upstairs, you build an apartment in the basement, and you're done. Whereas, a couple of the older areas of the city, like West End, Gatchel, it's a little bit more difficult. So they just rent out the house in the whole house.
Yeah, certainly in the hospital area, you mentioned that as well. It's one of those areas where the homes are not typically a bungalow. Yeah. First of all, there's not that many bungalows in the hospital area, mostly 2 stories or a story and a half. And so therefore, they're not the easiest sort of duplex type conversion.
That's right.
But you do see a lot of the student rentals and student housing.
Mm-hmm. So let's skip from the North End. Let's skip to the South End. You kick us off in the South End.
Okay. Well, the South End has probably the highest, except for sort of Broder, Long Lake when you get to that area, but it has one of the highest average sale prices for 2024. And we can see that continuing for sure in 2025. Average sale prices over $700,000 in that area. And what we saw last year, was also some increases in sales and activity there, certainly. And it was pretty close. Like, it was interesting to see the showing data, right? So New Sudbury had the highest, I believe, number of showings average for neighborhoods in about like 8.5-ish per listing, I think it was. Yep. And then in the South End, it was sort of the higher of the averages. The averages were more around 5.5 showings per listing, and certainly the South End sort of the higher side of that, closer to the 6 showings per listing. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of activity there, and it's still a very sought after area, right? Great schools, great transit, great neighborhoods, a mix of, much older homes, say in Llewellyn Park, and then some kind of newer construction, early 2000s, 2010s, in sort of that vintage green and even Mallard's Landing area as well in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. So you do get, some homes that are a lot newer, certainly, than the Llewellyn Park. And they have a good variety of homes, but certainly they're a lot more expensive. So I don't know, I think in 2025, we're going to continue to see the South End being a very desirable location to own home and to move to, certainly. But I think that affordability level, being that the average price is $700,000, that's not first-time home buyer sale price, right? First-time home buyers are looking more at that sort of 500 or sub 500 level. Yeah. So what I see, like, this is more anecdotally, I think, with a lot of people who I work with who say, I want to live in the South End because of the schools, the transit, and the proximity to everything. A lot of them will say, you know what, my second choice actually is going to be Lively. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people moving out to Lively, perhaps they work in the South End or they work maybe in Coppercliff at Ballet and want to maintain that proximity. But Lively is a great community, great little community, very close to the South End. It has that sort of feeling. I do work with a lot of people who come from outside of Sudbury who move here from maybe larger cities, and they're used to kind of having everything close together and having a community where you can walk or cycle to school, for example. I mean, certainly these people aren't cycling to work, but they can at least get their kids, and their kids can meet that community where they have friends that go to the same school, who maybe live down the street, and it really keeps that community atmosphere there. So that's typically what I find is my clients who say, you know what, South End's a little too pricey for the kind of house that we want, so therefore we'll go look for it in Lively. And what we saw last year in Lively, we saw a lot of activity. Actually, we saw a lot more listings, right? A lot more listings and a lot more sales. And it was interesting to see the sale price actually decreased somewhat year over year for Lively. Yeah, so that was probably one of the anomalies we saw. What do you think about Lively moving into 2025? Do you think it's going to...
Lively had a crazy 2024. It was actually, so there was 3 places in the city that the average price went down, and Lively only went down 2%. So it was like basically $4,000. The average price went down, but listings were up 26%, sales were up 29%, and then average price decreased 2% just because there was so much on the market and so many buyers. But it was kind of interesting to see, compared to all the other data, it was the one that had the biggest increase in listings. But I was surprised to see the sales actually keep up with that as well. Mm-hmm. So it's high in demand, and the amount of listings that hit the market will basically sell. Now, compared to, I think it was it Nickel Center? Listings were down, sales were down, but it's way smaller. So let's start that over.
Prices went up.
Yeah. Listings were down in Nickel Center. Sales were down, but not as far down as listings. So average price went up. So comparing that to Lively, where there was much more sales, much more listings, it was kind of interesting to see how little the price actually decreased. So people want to live in Lively. A lot of people are moving, like you said, from South End to Lively just for affordability. Average price was $474 in Lively, so still in that affordable first-time home buyer kind of range. And it is a great spot to live. So now moving it into 2025 in Lively, I think we're going to see more of the same. It's a great spot. You got the golf course. You have a little bit of new development as well. You have basically everything you need on a day-to-day basis. The grocery store, the Timmy's, the gas station, like everything is already there. So I think it's a great spot, and I think more people will flock there, especially as the South End average price increases.
Yeah. When you compare South End over $700 for an average sale price and Lively being $475, certainly it's a lot more affordable. One of the things we don't see that sort of price spiking, I suppose, in Lively is because we don't really have as much new development, which is typically that much higher priced. So when we look at locations like Braeside Balfour, so like Chelmsford, Azilda, that area, we've seen some significant pricing, I think, fluctuations or some significant price increases there. Yeah. And some of that could be driven by the new construction, whereas Lively kind of doesn't really have that. So the average price remains stable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So Chelmsford Azilda, another really great location in Sudbury, right? I know a lot of my clients love Azilda because it's just like 10 minutes from town.
Yeah,
it's so close.
Yeah.
And Chelmsford has a really great community as well. So we did see in that location, we saw a decrease in the number of listings, and we saw the price go up, right? It was around 10% or so,
yeah.
I believe.
So listings were down about 6%, sales were up 5%, and then that swing of 11% shot the average price up another 10%. So average price in so Azilda and Chelmsford put together, so Braeside Balfour, is about $530,000.
Right. So quite a bit higher than Lively area.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this maybe earlier, that it could be a little bit higher because of that sort of newer construction, those higher price points.
Yeah, I mean, to buy a new house in Chelmsford, where there is a lot of new development, you're in the $800,000 to $900,000. So obviously, a couple sales like that will shoot up the average price. But I think in general, it's surviving well. I mean, the area you buy bigger lots, you buy houses usually with garages, and it's not so unaffordable that first-time buyers can't buy. So it's a good place. It's it's a good sweet spot for families for sure.
Yeah. So at 530, we think that Chelmsford is a good area to invest in 2025. Do you think it's a good place for people to move to?
I think it's going to stay stable for next year. I don't think there's going to be a huge increase in prices out in Chelmsford, because we did see big increase in 2024. But I think it's still your stable Chelmsford market. I don't think it's going to go higher or lower. It's going to be pretty stable is my guess. And we'll see Obviously, average price might increase as soon as some of the inventory, the new construction inventory, starts selling. If it does in 2025, I think that's the only kind of variable that I see.
So we saw during COVID, a lot of people moving to these locations that are kind of outside the city center, like Chelmsford, Azilda. The Valley was another really big hotspot.
Huge.
During COVID. I know it was really, it was like lined up sometimes outside of a house to get in. It was appointments back to back to back. And of course that slowed down, the last couple of years, but still the Valley remains a very, very hot spot. So Valley, we're talking about like Val Caron, Therese, Hanmer area, maybe Blizzard Valley, McCrae Heights as well. So what are your thoughts on the Valley for 2025?
I think the Valley is set up to have a really good year in 2025. 2024, we saw a decrease of listings of 8%, an increase of sales of 6%, and then an average price increase of 6% as well. So people want to live there. There's not enough inventory, just like anywhere else in the city, to buy. But I think in 2025, it's set up so as inventory hits the market, it will sell, and the average price will go up in 2025. I think with the new development that's going on Bonaventure and a couple of other areas, I think it's a good spot. I think it's kind of similar to Chelmsford. You have everything you need, even more actually. You have the malls, you have the grocery stores, the gas stations, and obviously you have the rec center as well. So I think it's going to be a good spot. It's great for families. It's central to New Sudbury. It's central to Chelmsford. You have everything you need out there. I think it's set up to have a really good 2025. It's
kind of interesting to look at the Valley and Chelmsford as two communities that are sort of growing just kind of outside of the city center and kind of doing their own thing and thriving in a big way. I think we've seen a lot of people move out to the Valley because they have really good lot sizes. You can usually buy a house in that sort of 500,000 range, maybe up to 550. You get a nice house, a big lot with a double detached garage if you're lucky, and that's what a lot of people are looking for out there, for more space, more storage space. But it's interesting to see that there is actually a lot more development happening in the Valley compared to Chelmsford. Yeah. When you look at sort of the geography and the setup of both, so I don't want to call them cities, but little neighborhoods, let's say, they do have a lot of land and a lot of opportunity, but it seems like the Valley and Hanmer have a lot more new construction going on. You have like you mentioned, the Bonaventure subdivision. A lot of semi-detached homes are certainly a lot more affordable than your large, $800,000 bungalow, a new construction. But I think 2025, the Valley is going to be a real hot spot. I think that new construction is going to sell. They're also building those sort of more affordable new homes. I believe they don't have garages just right off the highway there. And they're sort of in the 600,000 range, I believe. Yep. Once those start selling, that's going to drive up the price of the average price for the area as well. And certainly the area is already equipped with really good schools, but I believe they're building a new school there as well. I think the Valley is going to be like really, really hot in 2025.
Yeah. And even moving into a higher market than just your average price, there is some beautiful acre lots. You think of like Gravel, Desmarais, you can get 5 acres, you can build a big house, you can have privacy, you can have space for the family. I think the higher end in the Valley is going to explode as well. I think it's a great spot.
Oh, absolutely. We even saw that last year. I believe there were a lot of homes that sold in that high, like 900,000, maybe over $1 million-ish range, that had that acreage. They were maybe newer built and had that space for, your pool, everything that you
toys.
Want. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, Valley is going to be really hot in 2025. I think it's going to be very, very busy. Mm-hmm. Cool.
So we'll have to next January, we're going to circle back and we're going to be like, all right, how did the Valley do? How did Chelmsford do?
Were we right or are we completely wrong in our predictions?
We'll see how we were, yeah.
We'll see how it is. But yeah, okay, that's great. So did we cover all our 5?
We did.
Hot spots.
Yeah.
For 20.
South End is a hot spot. New Sudbury is going to be a hot spot as usual. Valley is a hot spot. Lively is a hot spot. And Rayside Balfour. Anywhere else, they're going to do good. I mean, there's no place in Sudbury that tanked last year. So I think it's going to be a stable year for most places anyways. But those are, from what I'm seeing, what we're seeing, those are the places to watch out for and invest in.
Let's keep an eye on those spots and see what happens in 2025.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to the TNT podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a comment, and share with others.
We'll catch you next time. And until then, stay ahead in real estate.